Manipulation can happen to anyone in any kind of relationship, from romantic partnerships and friendships to family or even workplace settings. What makes manipulation especially insidious is how subtle it can be. A skilled manipulator often operates under the radar, leaving you questioning your own perceptions rather than their behavior. In the realm of dark psychology and human behavior, manipulators use a variety of underhanded tactics to exploit or control others for personal gain. Manipulation, by definition, is coercive or unethical behavior, driven by the goal of exploiting or controlling another person for your own personal gain. A manipulative person can be hard to recognize at first because their tactics frequently play on trust, fear, guilt, or love in ways that make you doubt yourself. The first step in protecting yourself is learning to spot the red flags. In this video, we will expose 6 common manipulation tricks that manipulators use to win and confuse you, and explain how to recognize each one before you get pulled in. These tactics include classic strategies like gaslighting, guilt tripping, love bombing, triangulation, projection, and moving the goalposts. By understanding these manipulative tricks and their warning signs, you can stay one step ahead and maintain control over your own decisions. Remember, knowledge is power. Once you know what to look for, you'll be better equipped to protect your psyche and uphold your boundaries when faced with a manipulator. 1. Gaslighting. Twisting your perception of reality. Gaslighting is one of the most infamous manipulation tactics. It is a form of emotional manipulation designed to make victims doubt their own reality and judgment through persistent lying, denial, and contradiction. In a gaslighting scenario, the manipulator repeatedly convinces you that your memory, perceptions, or feelings are wrong, even when they are accurate. This tactic persuades the victim that they are mistaken or being illogical, thereby creating an imbalance of power where the manipulator's version of reality prevails. The ultimate goal for the gaslighter is to make you so unsure of yourself that you become dependent on them for the truth and less likely to challenge their control. Gaslighters often employ certain telltale behaviors and phrases to undermine your confidence. Here are some common signs of gaslighting to watch for. Denial of facts. They flat out deny events or conversations that you clearly remember. For example, if you recall a specific incident, they might insist that never happened, making you question your memory. Trivializing and belittling. They dismiss your feelings as oversensitive or crazy. If you express hurt or frustration, a gaslighter might say, "You're overreacting," or "You're imagining things," trivializing your emotions. Exercised confusion. They shift blame or change the subject when confronted, leaving you confused. A gaslighter may hide or alter evidence, for instance, misplacing objects and then denying involvement, to make you doubt your sanity. Persistent lying. Even when presented with proof, they stick to false narratives. Gaslighters lie with confidence and consistency, which can wear down your certainty over time. Being on the receiving end of gaslighting often leaves you feeling disoriented, anxious, and unable to trust your own judgment. If you frequently find yourself second-guessing what actually happened in a situation or apologizing even when you believe you did nothing wrong, these are strong indicators of gaslighting. How to spot it? Trust your inner sense. If someone's version of events consistently clashes with your memory and makes you feel mentally foggy or off balance, take note. Acknowledging these signs is the first step toward breaking free of the gaslighter's hold. 2. Guilt tripping. Exploiting your sense of responsibility. Guilt tripping is a manipulation trick that leverages your conscience and sense of responsibility to influence your behavior. In a guilt trip, the manipulator makes you feel guilty or indebted so that you'll give in to their wishes. This tactic often involves twisting your own values against you. For instance, making you feel selfish or ungrateful simply for asserting a reasonable boundary. The manipulator's goal is to have you so bogged down in guilt that you comply with their demands to relieve the discomfort. effectively putting their needs above your own. A manipulator using guilt as a weapon might say or do things that turn your kindness and morals into liabilities. They often use past favors or sacrifices as leverage. In other words, they'll remind you of something they did for you in order to make you feel like you owe them. Jason Drake, a counseling clinician, explains that guilt trippers commonly bring up what they've done for you as a form of leverage to get what they want. Some classic examples of guilt-tripping phrases include, "If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have gotten through college. You owe me." Or, "After all I've sacrificed and you can't do this one thing for me." Such statements are crafted to instill a sense of obligation and shame. You might also hear things like, "I guess I'll just do it alone, don't worry about me," said with a sigh, implying that you're neglectful if you don't help. Signs of guilt tripping to be aware of. Feeling indebted for no good reason. You constantly feel like you owe the person, even when you've done your fair share. They never let you forget the favors they've done for you. Earning boundaries into selfishness. When you try to say no or set a boundary, they respond with disappointment or hurt to make you feel selfish or cruel for doing so. For example, "I can't believe you won't lend me money. I thought we were family." Mismatch blame for their pain. They make you responsible for their emotions or hardships. If they're upset or facing consequences, somehow it's your fault for not doing more. They might say, "I wouldn't be in this mess if you had helped me like you should have." You constantly apologize. Even when you haven't done anything wrong, you find yourself apologizing a lot. This is because the guilt tripper has you convinced you're always falling short. Victims of guilt tripping often comply with the manipulator's wishes out of a desire to alleviate the guilt and prove their worth. If you notice that interacting with someone routinely leaves you with an unreasonable sense of guilt or duty, step back and assess the situation. Healthy relationships don't require you to constantly prove your loyalty or gratitude. Recognizing guilt-tripping tactics is crucial to maintaining your self-respect and boundaries. 3. Love bombing. Overwhelming affection as a weapon. On the surface, love bombing might seem like the opposite of manipulation. After all, what's wrong with lots of love and attention? In reality, love bombing is a calculated tactic where a person overwhelms you with excessive affection, flattery, and gifts to gain control over you. It's manipulation masked as adoration. The manipulator bombards you with praise, constant contact, and grand gestures, making you feel uniquely special and cherished, which in turn makes it hard for you to refuse their requests or see their flaws. In the beginning, it can feel irresistible, even too good to be true, and that's exactly the point. A love bomber's strategy is to create quick intimacy and emotional dependence. By showering you with attention and affection, they aim to win your trust rapidly and discourage you from maintaining other relationships or personal boundaries. You might notice that the relationship becomes very intense very quickly. For example, they might say, "I've never felt this connection with anyone," early on, lavish you with gifts, or want to spend every free moment together right from the start. This whirlwind can be intoxicating, but also a red flag if it's excessive and premature. Key signs that you might be experiencing love bombing include overwhelming attention from the start, nonstop compliments, texts, or gifts that seem disproportionate for how long you've known each other. The person might shower you with gifts, excessive praise, and declarations of love within days or weeks of meeting. Rapid pace of commitment. They push for quick commitments, saying "I love you" very soon, talking about marriage or lifelong plans early on, or pressuring for exclusivity almost immediately. It can feel flattering, but also rushed. Ice affection. They monopolize your time with the claim that they just can't get enough of you. In reality, this often leaves you isolated, spending less time with friends or family, and more dependent on the manipulator for emotional fulfillment. Cleanliness crash after the high. Once you're swept away and fully invested, a love bomber may abruptly pull back the intense affection. That sudden drop can leave you scrambling to get the good times back. You might start chasing their approval and attention, which gives them even more control. Initially, love bombing feels great and enrapturing, but it usually leaves you isolated and makes you lose sight of who you are. Manipulators use this tactic to create dependency. When they later withdraw the affection, you're left craving it and are more likely to tolerate bad behavior to get that affection back. If someone you've just met or started dating is coming on way too strong, consider it a possible manipulation red flag rather than pure romance. Healthy love grows steadily, whereas love bombing is excessive, intense, and conditional, a means to an end for the manipulator. By recognizing this pattern, you can ensure you keep your personal boundaries intact and avoid getting swept into an unhealthy dynamic. 4. Triangulation, divide and conquer. Triangulation is a manipulation tactic where the manipulator involves a third party to control the primary relationship or situation. Instead of dealing with issues directly with you, they drag in another person, creating a triangle of communication and tension that they can exploit. The classic effect is tension and division. By bringing a third person into what should be a two-person issue, the manipulator creates rivalry, insecurity, or alliance against the victim. This divide and conquer strategy keeps the manipulator in a position of power, often as the apparent mediator or center of attention among the parties involved. In practice, triangulation can take many forms. For example, in a family, one parent might turn a child against the other parent by sharing inappropriate details or casting blame, effectively forcing the child to take sides. In a friendship or workplace, a manipulator might gossip to you about a third person, or vice versa, manufacturing mistrust and forcing people to compete for their approval. The triangulator might say things like, "Well, so-and-so agrees with me that you're overreacting," to bolster their position and make you feel outnumbered or judged. By doing this, they avoid addressing issues one-on-one and instead orchestrate a scenario where you feel you must navigate not just your relationship with the manipulator, but also the opinions or involvement of the third party. How to spot triangulation. Look for situations where conflicts or communications consistently involve a third person who shouldn't be involved. Some indicators include gossip and pitting people against each other. The person frequently tells you negative things someone else said about you, or tells others negative things you supposedly said. They relay messages instead of having direct conversations, stirring the pot and then playing peacemaker. Playing people off one another. You get the sense you're in a competition for the manipulator's attention or approval. They might compare you to others. Why can't you be more like third person? To create jealousy or rivalry. Bringing a third party into disputes. Rather than resolving an issue privately, they insist on involving another person to back them up. For example, in an argument they might say, "Let's ask friend's name. I told them everything and they think you're wrong too," using the third person as a weapon. Manipulator as the middleman. They always position themselves as the messenger or peacekeeper between two sides of a conflict that they largely manufactured. This keeps the focus off their behavior and on the tension between others. Triangulation weakens direct communication and trust in relationships, increasing the manipulator's control. You may find that, due to the constant interference, you can't independently verify the truth. You're always hearing things through the manipulator's filter. If you suspect someone is triangulating, try to remove the third party from the equation. For instance, insist on speaking directly to the other person involved to clarify any he said, she said stories. By recognizing triangulation, you can stop playing the manipulator's game of divide and conquer and address issues on your own terms. 5. Projection. Blaming you for their faults. Projection is a psychological defense mechanism that manipulators hijack as a tactic. In simple terms, projection is when someone attributes their own feelings, motives, or actions to another person. In the context of manipulation, it means the manipulator is placing their negative qualities or behaviors onto you, so that you appear to be the one at fault. Essentially, they claim that emotions or actions they are guilty of are actually yours. This is a powerful way to deflect blame and avoid accountability. If you're busy defending yourself against their accusations, you're not focusing on the manipulator's own behavior. For example, a manipulative person who is lying to you might constantly accuse you of being dishonest. If they are cheating in a relationship, they may frequently question your fidelity without cause. Maggie Holland, a licensed counselor, explains that someone who manipulates might stir up drama and then blame someone else for creating that energy. In other words, they cause the problem but insist it's your fault or someone else's. By doing so, the manipulator dodges responsibility for their actions and puts you on the defensive. You find yourself scrambling to prove your innocence or good intentions, all while the real issues, the manipulator's actions, go unaddressed. Here are common signs of projection in a manipulative interaction. Excessive accusations. The person frequently accuses you of bad behaviors that are out of character for you, and often the very things they have done or are doing. These accusations come without evidence. For example, I know you've been talking behind my back, when you haven't, but in reality they gossip about you. Hypocrisy and double standards. They criticize you for traits or mistakes that they clearly exhibit themselves. For instance, a manipulator who is always late might scold you for being unreliable, or someone who habitually breaks promises might label you a liar. This is classic projection, blaming you for the traits they refuse to acknowledge in themselves. You feel falsely guilty or confused. After their accusations, you find yourself reflecting, did I actually do something wrong here? You might start second-guessing your own behavior and character because they are so adamant in blaming you. This confusion is a telltale sign, as projection erodes your trust in your own reality. Pattern of deflection. Whenever you bring up a concern about their behavior, the conversation quickly flips to your supposed shortcomings. You might say, "It upset me that you yelled at me," and suddenly they retaliate with, "Well, you always make me yell because you're so irritating," turning the spotlight back onto you. Manipulators use projection to ensure they never have to face their own bad behavior. It's a way of saying, "It's not me, it's you." This tactic aids them in dodging responsibility and avoids any need for them to change their behavior. If you notice a person who never admits fault, and instead somehow you end up being blamed whenever you challenge them, projection could be at play. To protect yourself, remind yourself of the truth. Just because someone says you are X doesn't make it true. Consider the source and ask if their accusations actually reflect their own issues. Staying grounded in your own self-knowledge is key, because a manipulator's projections are more about themselves than about you. 6. Moving the goalposts. Changing demands to keep control. Moving the goalposts is a manipulation trick where someone continually changes the criteria for satisfaction or success, ensuring that you can never actually meet their expectations. In a healthy scenario, when you meet a request or standard, you've resolved the issue. But with a manipulator, no matter how much you do or how well you perform, they change their expectations at the last minute so that you're always striving and never succeeding. The effect is that you feel perpetually inadequate, frustrated and exhausted from trying to hit a moving target that's deliberately unreachable. This tactic gives the manipulator a sense of power. You keep working harder to please them, and they keep you under their control by withholding approval or acknowledgement. A classic sign of moving goalposts is when you fulfill one demand only to be immediately met with another, often higher or different demand. For instance, your boss says you'll get a promotion if you complete a big project. You do it successfully, and then they say, actually, you also need to mentor this new employee and increase sales by 20%. The target keeps shifting. In a relationship, perhaps your partner claims, if you really loved me, you'd spend Sunday with my family. When you do that, it becomes, well, if you truly love me, you'd also cancel your plans next weekend for me. Whatever you do is never quite enough. Indicators of the goalposts moving include a mentor changing expectations. The rules seem to be in flux. What pleased them yesterday isn't good enough today. They constantly add new requirements or raise the standards, often at the moment you approach success. Knack of acknowledgement. Even when you meet their requests, they barely acknowledge it or they downplay it. Any success on your part is met with silence or a new criticism. As one expert noted, with manipulators like this, your efforts and success won't be acknowledged, even if you do reach the supposed goal. You feel trying to satisfy this person feels like running on a treadmill. Lots of effort, no finish line. This leaves you feeling frustrated, exhausted, and never good enough. Those emotional states are strong signals that someone may be moving the goalposts on you, shifting justifications. When confronted, the manipulator always has a reason why the goal had to change. They might claim, "Situations change, you should have tried harder," or put the blame on you for not anticipating the new expectation. They never own the fact that they are the ones changing the standards. Holland, the counselor, explains that with manipulative people who move goalposts, you're never going to actually reach those goalposts, and your efforts and success won't be acknowledged if you do. In other words, the game is rigged. The house always wins. Recognizing this trick is important for your sanity. When you realize someone is intentionally never satisfied, you can stop the futile cycle of overpleasing. Instead, set your own standards and boundaries. You might decide, for example, "I've done what was asked. If that's not enough, the problem isn't my effort. It's their unreasonable demands." By seeing the pattern, you protect your self-esteem from constant erosion and can choose to disengage from the unwinnable game manipulators want you to play. Manipulators thrive in the shadows of doubt, shame, and confusion. By shining a light on these 6 common tactics: gaslighting, guilt-tripping, love-bombing, triangulation, projection, and moving the goalposts, we expose the playbook that manipulators rely on to gain power over others. You may have recognized some of these behaviors from personal experiences or observed them in others. The key takeaway is that these tactics are about control, not friendship, love, or care. A manipulative person will work the normal dynamics of a relationship, twisting reality, tugging at your heartstrings, or constantly shifting expectations, all to keep you unbalanced and overly accommodating. The encouraging news is that knowledge truly is power in this context. By learning what to look for, you can protect yourself from manipulation tactics and psychological games before they start. When you notice the telltale signs we discussed, trust that inner voice that says something's not right. You do not have to play along with someone's manipulative script. In fact, the moment you identify a manipulation trick is the moment you can start to reclaim control, whether that means calling out the behavior, setting firm boundaries, or distancing yourself from the person altogether. Remember that setting boundaries isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about safeguarding healthy relationships and your own well-being. Finally, don't hesitate to seek support if you find yourself entangled with a manipulator. Talk to a trusted friend, counselor, or therapist. Outside perspectives can validate your experiences and help you strategize a response. No one deserves to be manipulated. By exposing these tactics and acknowledging them for what they are, you equip yourself to stand strong against dark psychology tricks and maintain healthier, honest relationships. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and always remember, you're allowed to put your reality and well-being first. Knowledge and self-trust are your best defenses against manipulation.